What's going on, everybody? It's your co-host here, Kenny Buller, on the Second Floor Podcast. I would like to first of all thank you all for continuing to follow our journey as we discover and unfold tips, tricks, and strategies on how to optimize your life, your business, and your health beyond the 9 to 5 grind. Today's guest is a very special guest. He's somebody by the name of Jerret Jonzon. Jerret Jonzon, my apologies. And he is someone who I aspired to really want to connect with when I worked at the time at TELUS as a regional marketing manager. He was working on the Internet of Things as a sales executive team lead, and he is now working at Insight as an enterprise and public sector executive for their sales team. He has over 20 years of experience in the sales game. And for a long time now, I wanted to figure out who was going to be our very first guest to have such an incredible amount of passion, but also experience and insight on what it looks like from the perspective of a sales executive and, the nuances behind how they look at how they are perceived and how they manage to move the needle forward. And a lot of it having to do in our conversation with on this episode regarding, first of all, how you can manage those relationships that you have with clients. And the second thing is, making sure that you're being your most authentic self when you are delivering a product or service. We talked a lot about with Jerret, how to be honest with yourself and your clients and how to make sure that whatever company you're working for, you're looking at the people that are working with you as opposed to the actual company itself. And we do a deep dive in getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, especially during this time in the global pandemic that we're in. A lot of us had to pivot virtually on doing some of our sales calls, on presenting something to our teams, whatever it might be. We actually go in on some strategies on what you could do in a virtual capacity when it comes to selling whatever it is that you're delivering as your product. For those of you who are listening, this episode is really meant for those who want to do a little bit of more digging on what it looks like from someone's perspective when they're in the game of sales. For anyone else out there who is in sales, to get some more insight on how to develop a really strong career out of it. And then from the health perspective, just bouncing off on ideas on how this relates so much to those who are in the fitness world and how you could ensure that you're delivering the right results that match what your clients want at the end of the day when it comes to their goals. Super excited for you to tune in. We actually spoke for more than 2 hours, so prepare yourselves for quite the deep, detailed conversation around everything that Jerret and I have done over the past 10 to 20 years. I really hope you enjoy it. If this episode is something you liked, please share it. Please subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on iTunes, on Spotify, send us a review, anything. Honestly, guys, your support goes a really long way, and we wouldn't be able to be here if it weren't for you guys. So hope you like this one. Continue to tune in, and please stay safe. Here we go. So for starters, I want to welcome you to the podcast, Jerret. Thanks for coming over.
Yeah, no, appreciate you having me. I think it's, as you said in kind of a pre-call, it's been a long time coming and long overdue, and, kind of given the last probably 8-9 months of where the the world is at, and it's good. It's good to kind of have a positive change in conversation, and obviously collectively, we've got a lot of, I think, personality traits in common. So, looking forward to having the chat with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because I find there's already a lot of similarities in individuals who have shared the love for being in the sales industry. And I know we're going to do our best to tie in your expertise in sales with what we've pivoted towards into the second season, with reminding yourself what being healthy looks like for yourself, physically, mentally, but also, most importantly, in the field you're in, through the relationships you build. And I want to start off initially with the conversation surrounding what you've done to build really solid relationships with your clients. And I recognize myself how, when I look back on the strategies that I've put in place and the debates I've had with managers, with leaders, associated with be more people oriented as opposed to task oriented. So instead of the conversation being, what are we doing to sell this client? It's more so, hey, what are we doing to build the relationship? What have we done to build the relationship for, that symbiotic relationship to feel more organic and for you to feel like you're actually getting something real out of that client and you're giving them what they want at the end of the day, because there's just honesty, and then the conversation in the mix of it, you're seeing who they really are and vice versa. I'd love to know and have you share what that's looked like over the several years you've been in the game.
Yeah, I think it really goes back to a concept on, I hate the term sales, because sales is, there's a connotation about it that it's self-serving, and it's all about managing expectations and managing relationships with people. And in order for you to, I think, truly drive value to clients and mutual value, right? Because it can't always be one-sided. You have to have the ability to get personal rewards or personal value out of it. It has to go back to really understanding what their personality type is and how do you manage your style and your approach to that personality type. And I think the sales, you mentioned the term symbiotic, and I like the term more organic for me personally, because the sales, I was just on with a client last week and we just had this like almost identical discussion about this. It's that if I'm going about things the right way and I'm really having an understanding of what it is that you're trying to do, and I'm aligning the path of least resistance for you to get to that end goal, then there will be an inherent transaction that takes place at some point, either by me to you or you to me. And so you really, even in your world as someone who comes from, the personal training or lifestyle coaching, if you want to call it, because I don't think it's personal training. It's really lifestyle coaching.
Very holistic.
Yeah, right? I think it's, if you think about the best of the best in trainers, right? They don't take the same program and apply it to every single client, right? They take what they know based on their understanding and their research and their history on body type, age, fitness goals, work ethic, metabolism rate, like metabolic rate, right? Like they understand fundamentally all of those principles that are unique and individual to those people. And then they tailor their approach that matches what their clients' goals are. And then holistically, what is their core strengths? And maybe what is their areas of opportunity or areas of growth and development. And so it's the same thing, I think, when you talk about, sales, air quotes, it's that history, that research, the vernacular, the high level understanding of that person's environment, and just showing them that you've got a level of expertise and a level of credibility because you've done this before. If you told someone in the personal training world, like, hey, I just worked out with a guy who had, 25% body fat, and, he was a working dad and he's 45 years old, and I tailored a program to his work-life balance, and I was able to get him down to 15% inside of 6 months. People would listen to that and be like, oh, well, that sounds good. Tell me like how you did that, right?
It's a case study.
It's a case study, right? And I think that goes back to just your level of competency and understanding, what it is that your customer, like what is their business, and at the end of the day, what a value do you have to allow them to grow or expand on that business.
And that's a very unique thing when you mention how looking back and understanding that not everyone is going to be treated in the same way. Not everyone's going to have this cookie cutter, oh, you want to lose fat and you want to gain muscle. Well, I'm going to give you what I gave Cheryl last month. There might be, acceptingly so, certain elements of that program that you'll tie in. But now I find the biggest differentiator in, let's just say, the average trainer or the average sales executive, whatever have you, is from that person to the one who's doing everything above and beyond. They're looking and saying, okay, well, what is the specific problem this person has? What is it that they're dealing with? For instance, maybe there's a hip imbalance in the training world. Maybe you're recognizing that this small business owner, compared to the one you worked on last month, they're on overdrive and they just need something to save their time. And I want to know, what are some of the questions you might ask or the things you might do prior to sitting down with that client so you feel very prepared to make this feel custom for them?
Yeah, I think, you can take it kind of two approaches. So we'll talk a little bit about my world, and then we'll talk a little bit about
love for you to
kind
share
of
that. How
that would apply in your world in fitness and personal well-being. I think, I want to say that I've had the opportunity to be around like just such a tremendous amount of thought leadership with individuals throughout my career. And they all go back to one common principle. And it's been like this for 21 years that I've been in kind of, we'll call it customer relationships, right? Like that's exactly what it is. It's just customer relationships. It is the ability to do research based on, the internet, for example, right? You can learn a lot from a customer's annual report, for example, the management discussion and analysis. So in the industry, it's called MD&A. You can take an extended look at that report and understand as an organization where their senior leadership is really tasking each level. And if you think about it as a hierarchy, they give them, almost in a sense like a specific mandate where the CEO or the president would set a strategy. This year, maybe because of COVID, in a customer service industry, it's all about retention, right? Like, how do we get people from not panicking and leaving us versus, in a year where people maybe have a little bit more flexibility in cash flow, they're more likely to invest in products or services or take on new approaches or really expand their customer market. So you really have to understand what is the current state of your customer. And in your world, it's almost the exact same principle, right? If someone comes to you for a collaboration on setting an agenda, it could be, they say like 80%, 90% of it is diet, right? So, understanding where someone is at just by having a conversation around like, what are your eating habits? Do you graze? Do you snack? Do you fast? Do you intermittent fast? Do you do keto? Do you not do keto? Like, what is it that is important to you, or what are some of the principles that you've tried and maybe you failed? And then you can take that same logic back to a business conversation, right? So when you're having these conversations with an individual, you can relate it back and it gives you surprisingly a lot of credibility, because it shows that not only when you're in a customer conversation are you listening, but that you're really trying to be that liaison to a problem that they have and the ability for them to solve that problem. So if you go back to the annual report, or you're doing research on them and you've read a news article, recently this customer lost $100 million worth of customer subscriptions. Okay, well, that at a high level might seem really, really like drastic. It could be crippling for some companies, but maybe other companies, there's a further story to that. Maybe they took money out of, customer growth and put it into R&D. So they're thinking kind of phase 2, phase 3, right? And so when you get in those opportunities, it just gives you the right to ask the questions. And I think one of the questions that I think is always important to go back to answer your original ask was, tell me a little bit about like what is really top of mind in your environment related to X, Y, Z that
Right
I've
now.
read that it's important, right? So you're asking them a question about, call it current state, but you're really relating it back to, truth be told, what is the business in their world, right? Asking for, what are their customers asking for? What are their internal stakeholders asking for? And it gives you a level set based on what you know externally, i.e. what you've read on the internet, or you've done your research, or you've talked to people on the outside looking in, and being able to draw inferences back out to what's actually going on internally.
Yeah, wow. It reminds me so much of recognizing how you need to ask and know your client from the perspective of what are you doing to keep what you have on the retention piece of what you asked. And then from where you believe you could come in as an expert, so you know what you could do to help the person out, it becomes, okay, well, where are the gaps? Where can I come in here and know what you're doing right? Because let's face it, what's keeping you afloat right now, there's clearly something that you're still doing that you should keep doing. Let's acknowledge that. And I find when it comes from the accountability perspective, this is where I like how our worlds collide is when you have sold this minimal viable product for a business, you want to make sure that at the end of the day, you're asking yourself, okay, well, what am I now still going to do to hold them accountable to ensure that this product is actually making a difference in their business? And how I relate to that from the personal trainer perspective is I always tell my clients, Jerret, I say, listen, I'm with you for maximum 3 to 5 hours a week. That's a fraction of how much time you actually have and a fraction of how much I get to see you. And then I want to ask, well, what are you doing outside these doors? What's working, what's not working, and let's talk about it, and let's ensure we build upon those and build better habits. Let's stack habits bit by bit.
It's a great point that you make about mutual accountability, because there's two elements of that I think are really, really important to note. One, you have to have a customer that's willing to spend time with you. And it takes time to build that relationship up where they trust in the fact that you're actually going to go and have that takeaway, right? So you think about the example that you just shared where, you reference 3 to 5 like hours a week. There's a commitment outside of those 3 to 5 hours that they take the principles and the foundation that you're really, arming them with, and they're going to apply their own commitment outside of that, right? And so if you think about it in a customer environment, the second element to that is in mutual accountability. If I give a customer the information that I think is going to allow them to get from point A to point B in the path of least resistance, maybe with, well, not always the cheapest or least expensive, but I think it's the one that I would say would make most sense for them. They have to be willing to go back and do a sanity check, right? And they have to have that willingness to say, I think there's something to what this person recommended. Let me go and validate it on my own and do my own research, my own understanding of what it is that this person recommended and why did they recommend it, right? And I think the only way to give people that motivation to do that is to give them examples of exactly how you've taken a similar approach with someone similar size in your world, similar body type, endomorph, ectomorph, mesomorph, right? Similar approach. And you say, okay, well, I did this for these type of clients and here's some of my success factors. And you don't need to say, well, hey, John from down the street, right? You could say, well, hey, I took, a mother of 2 who, just had baby number 2 12 months ago. And she was really struggling kind of, with, postpartum, right? And the mental drain of being a mother and not having enough personal time. And I was able to give her a plan that allowed her the flexibility and the accountability to go back and in her world, in her environment, be able to take what you've given her, and she trusts in the fact that what you're recommending for her is actually going to work. And the only way that you can truly do that is to give examples or share examples of success stories, right?
Yeah, that's big. And I find that naturally comes with the experience. And I know there's going to be some listeners out there, very much so like how I felt, even jumping into the fitness industry, where you deal with that first level of resistance and you can't fall back on those case studies because you simply just don't have them. You're a brand new trainer, you're a brand new car salesman, you're a brand new consultant, whatever it might be, and you know what you're recommending this client based off of your years of studying how to help this person out, or just let's just say your intuition on knowing what's going to help them.
Yeah.
They go, you know what? And this is like the financial value aside. They go, you know what? No, I don't want that. This is what's right for me. I want this.
Yeah.
And you know that's just, it's not really the best thing. It's like it doesn't work in their favor. You know, with their goal that they told you that they want to do, you're recommending that they train this certain way, or you give them this certain service or product. Yeah. So I'm wondering on your end, Jerret, if you can go back to a time where you dealt with that heavy level of resistance from a client. Maybe this also might tie in that relationship factor or not. And they just weren't biting. They said, listen, Jerret, we're gonna do this. And if not, you don't want us to do it, see ya. We're gonna go to the next guy who'll let us. Yeah. And you just know that at the end of the day, that's not even going to do half of much of the results they're looking for compared to what you know is going to work for them.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, if you think about the ability now and the access to information, most of the time in every client situation, doesn't matter if it's in enterprise level sales to car sales that you referenced, they say like now it's something like 97% of the people know what they want before they get to whatever it is that they're trying to buy, right? They've done their homework, they've done their research. So it's not about changing their mindset. Even though, you know, you think that, hey, a customer might not necessarily be making the right decision. It's not about you saying, gosh, you know, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, I think you're going down the wrong path. It's about, help me understand why you chose this path. And would you be open to understanding that there might even be a simpler path for you from getting point A to point B? And I used to do, you know, work, I think roughly like 6 or 7 years ago now, in public sector. And the big thing at that time with these particular clients that I was working with was like an adoption of, you know, a technology that like literally it's such a big platform that customers would only get like 5 to 10 to 15% of the way through. And they'd have hundreds and thousands of dollars dumped into this particular, you know, platform and have very little to show for it. And they were set because they thought, okay, well, this is the past. I read this, this report. I talked to this individual and they're going to get me from 15% to 20%. But it's not about those little gains. It's about, if you're able to take what a customer's mindset is and add a layer or an approach to that mindset that gets them, maybe they go from 90% of their success rate to 95 or 97. That last 5 to 7% is really all you need to do to truly differentiate value. Because if a customer knows their path or they have a sense of direction on where they're already going, a lot of times it's just about giving them the right resources to get them over that hurdle or that hump, rather than trying to take all of the hours and all of the research and resources and money and time and effort spent that they've already done and trying to alter that or change that or displace that. Maybe you just give them that extra nudge to get them over the finish line, which is important, I think, in your world, right? You could have a client come to you who, maybe they're already an elite, bodybuilder, or, maybe they're running, but they keep getting injured. Okay, well, let's do a little bit of homework on, why are you training this way? You're in shape, you're at 7% body fat or 8% body fat. you know, your BMI is the lowest that it's ever been. You're running a half marathon or a full marathon or doing whatever it is that you're doing, but yet you have these setbacks. So let's figure out how I can add a capability for you for maybe injury prevention, right? Like, and so if you think about it, maybe they're 90% of the way there and they've done all the heavy lift. They've joined the running room and they do all that. Why would I displace what someone truly values, what's important to them, rather than give them maybe a little bit of information or a little bit of help that gets them that extra, we'll call it like that last leg or mile.
I really like that